Good morning, friends. Hello, and welcome to the 113th episode of the Checkin In podcast. My name is Biniam. This is the podcast that I'd like to check in with you guys every weekday morning as best as I can. Today's podcast will be just a little bit shorter just because time is running away on me and I need to go catch my transit for work. We are recording these super early these mornings. Super early right now. It's almost 4:30ish. It's approaching 4:30ish here, and such is the dynamic I'm in this season of life where we do a bit of shifting in our schedule to make things work and still be able to serve you guys with these podcasts. Vinny, I haven't seen you for a bit as well, Redskins. Nice to see you again, my friend. How have you been? Nice to have you coming in for a bit on the Been Checking In podcast. Thanks for joining in. So, friends, this is the podcast, I could say, where I do three key things, three key pillars that are what I usually say sustain this podcast. Number one, we grow aware of ourselves. Number two, learn to be kind to ourselves. And number three, we experience happiness as we experience all the other in between emotions, which are just as necessary and have their place and serve us well in the midst of it all. So, three key pillars that, again, sustain us on this podcast. I love reviewing them because they are that critical for me, they are that essential. And if there's something I love doing, is being able to share from my experience, from my insights in life. I think I've had quite a few now where I have had something to talk about for quite some time. And those who know me well know I always have something to say on whatever we're talking about, if I understand it well, that is. But I think I understand quite a few things well. And that's why I love sharing with you on this podcast, saying, hey, this is an important part for me. I started off this social media engagement in a totally different arena and corner, which I really enjoyed and loved, sharing my Uber rides, but at the very heart of it, I think it was more the way I connect with people that really resonated with you. And I want to keep on inspiring that. Today is a Tuesday, December the 13th. No, let's see, today is Tuesday, December the 14th. Oh my goodness. 14th of December, and I opened my curtains up today so you could see what it's like here in Calgary, Alberta. So that's the Calgary Tower over there and the city skyline. It's barely visible because right now it is like a whiteout snowstorm here. So that'll be a lot of fun to walk into. Thompson's Alex says, "Hey, what's up? Last time I saw you, you were driving Uber. You still doing that or something new?" I'm doing something new. I'm driving a delivery truck right now, delivering food to restaurants around my city, and so that's what I'm doing in the meantime. I still hope to get back to driving Uber. It's just not quite the season I can get back into it at the moment, just because I have to make some money to insure my vehicle first, and so that's where I'm at with that. There, Thompson Alex, thanks for asking. I appreciate that. All right, friends, this is going to be a shorter podcast, like I said, because I do have to skedaddle soon here to catch my transit to work. And that takes about an hour to get there. That's awesome, says Thompson. I'm glad I saw you live again. Thank you. Matt Gresco, haven't seen you in a while. Hope you're well. Thank you. Sorry, podcast. That's okay, Thompson. No worries. I'm glad to be here. This is live streaming right now. And then the recording goes up on my Instagram, of course, YouTube, and Spotify as well under the same name, which is the Been Checking In podcast. Today, friends, I wanted to tell you why I call this podcast the Been Checking In podcast. Sometimes I just take a moment and reflect on what seems to be obvious in some sense, right? And there's a reason why I named this podcast the Been Checking In podcast. It's one of those things, and I'm often curious about when I meet someone and I hear their name. I'm often curious as to, I wonder why they were named so. I wonder what meaning is behind this name. I wonder if there were some expectations, perhaps, or some hopes that were expressed in you being assigned the name that you wear. So that's one of the things I usually inquire into. This is kind of a similar vein in why I wanted to share with you and say, here's what I was thinking when I named this podcast, the Been Checking In podcast. And for me, it's quite simple. In this time of my life where it's really important for me to keep track of me and how I'm growing and changing over time, how I'm becoming more aware of myself, I couldn't think of any better analogy than to say, I'm going to check in on myself, just like you would when you go to have a check in at the doctor. When you go for a check in at the doctor, you want that full diagnostic foray of, hey, what's going on with me? What do I need to be aware of? There's the awareness piece. What do I need to know in going forward with my health and how that's going to look? We do the same when we take our vehicle in. We get a checkup on our what do they call it? When you take your vehicle into the garage, that's like a check-in, right? Check my vehicle and make sure that the oil is topped up, all the fluid levels are good, the engine's not doing something funky that I'm unaware of. We want to give it a check-in, and so these are infrequent and momentary kind of check-ins where we just hope that everything is going according to plan, right? Same dynamic for the Ben Checkin In podcast. This is my way of first and foremost doing a check-in on myself and saying, hey, let me apply some questions, some self-reflection questions to myself to continue that checkup process. But for me, I want to do it on an ongoing daily basis. I want to make this a practice in my life. Some of you might be thinking, hey, I don't need to do this daily. I just need to do this maybe once a month or something like that. And that's what you feel is sufficient. For my part, I am so intrigued with the discoveries I make about myself on an ongoing basis. I want to be aware and growing in awareness of what does it mean to be me, because the more I know myself, the more I'm able to navigate this life with intention, with purpose, with clarity, with attuned precision of the choices that I'm making and why I'm making those choices. This is really important for me. And so that's why, for me, I wanted to do this on a daily basis. And as I do this, I also wanted to share those experiences with you to encourage you to consider what would this look like for you to do this check-in. And it's not like a full-on surgical process where we're like, all right, stat, let's open things up. Why no more rideshare being asked by Jags? Well, here's the short of it, Jags. I'm going to work on brevity because that's one of my challenging points. In short, I'm not driving rideshare right now because I took a break to try and invest in a business idea, which I thought was going to go well. It didn't quite go as I planned. So that was discouraging, but I invested quite a bit into it. So right now I don't have enough to be able to sustain insuring my vehicle again because I've taken it off insurance. And so I'm doing another job right now, delivering, like driving a delivery truck and delivering food to restaurants around the city. I hope to be able to share some of my experiences there with you guys too, just so you can see what I'm doing and how I continue to navigate and try to have optimistic outlook for my context going forward. But that's the short of why I'm not driving right now. I definitely still enjoy and want to get back to driving for Uber. That's definitely on the radar and something I wanted to keep on doing in the future. But for the time being right now, it's just not in the cards. So that's why. Hello, Annie. Good to see you. Mr. Gasly, what time is it where you are right now? It is currently 4:30ish. So, yeah, early morning. But such is the nature of making these commitments that I have work and still connecting with you guys. So, hello, Medla. How are you, my friend? Good to see you again. So, that's why I want to do frequent check ins on me. Frequent check ins aren't the kind where I'm like, I need to change a whole bunch of things drastically. It's just a spot checks, of saying, okay, let me come from a different angle here, ask myself a different question, and consider the implications of the responses that I give to said questions. This is my way of growing as an individual and saying, how do I want to continue to um, be a better version of me, in essence? I want to be a better version of me as I move forward in life. And I value these pillars that I've set this podcast on. I value them so tremendously. And they're my means for doing those spot check-ins. You're always amazing sharing your views, says Annie. Thank you so much, my friend. That is really gracious of you. So that's the reason why I do share these. is because I want to encourage and inspire you guys that this isn't inaccessible. This is something that we could do together. This is something that we can do. It doesn't have to be scary because for so many of you guys, what time? Serbian, it is 4:30 a share in Calgary, Alberta. 4:30 a.m. For so many of you, when you look at when you look underneath the hood of your own life, it can be a scary place because you see so much that needs to be worked on. You're like, I am such a mess. And I remember what that was like once upon a time when I was there. Once upon a time, I used to be so overwhelmed with the amount of work that I thought it would take for me to become a better person because there's so many things that I was going through or wrestling with. And so I want to offer hope to you that you don't need to change in an instant. You don't need to bring about that overhaul change in a short span of time. What would be helpful is if you were to consider just small by small incremental chunks, looking at different elements in your life and saying, okay, let me take this little piece here and consider what this looks like as I move forward and work through this. That for me is far more, how can I say, it's far more plausible, it's far more doable in this process of change that we're going to be going through and saying, how can we get to be better people, but not do it all at once? That's not what I want to burden you guys with. I want to inspire hope and hope that comes from saying, hey, let's go through this process in a slow fashion. Let's take our time doing this, but let's have hope in the midst of it that we can change and we can grow. That's really important. Yeah, so that's why I do what I do. And that's why I named this podcast the Been Checking In podcast. Again, the question that I was asking is why I like to check in often and why you should too. I'm not telling you this is the only way, but this is why I think it's important. Where the F have you been, says Emmer. Good to see you as well. I have been working, I've been doing some things in life that I thought might work, and it just didn't work out as well as I planned. So I am refocusing, I am re engaging. I'm hoping to get back and do what I did before and sharing with you guys experiences. Right now, I'm in the midst of training at my job, and so I'm doing that. I want to. I want to consider how I can best serve you guys. Right now, I'm continuing on doing the podcast because that's important for me, but I still want to share with you experiences and thoughts and ideas in life, and I still have a desire to connect with you guys, honestly. But it's just taking some time to figure out how to go about doing it. I'm back 2 days in a row. Let's go. I love this content. It's good to see you, user 1743. So, friends, I call you friends because if you're listening to this podcast, we're somewhat aligned on what we feel is important. And I talk about things that I feel are important. I'm driven by things that are important in my life. And that's what I like to talk to people about is things of importance. I think that's why my content got to be so popular is because the conversations I have with people were meaningful conversations. They were conversations that, as my listeners and my followers listen to, they're like, man, this is like really good things to think about and talk through. I like bringing the best that I have the to the fore. I like doing that because it's my way of saying this isn't. I don't want to squander or waste these opportunities. For me, this is really important, and so as I share what I feel is important, as I share from my experience of saying this is the best that I have, when you listen in, I'm like, we're on the same page. We're on the same page. We're rowing in the same direction, and we have the same ambitions at heart. And that's why, for me, this is super critical. Super critical that I continue making you guys a part of my life. That I continue to make you guys a part of my priority list. And you're in essence, you become like in some sense one of my purposes that I want to fulfill on and invest in. You're like an investment to me. Yes, as you listen and consider and grow alongside me, I'm like, yes, this is really time well spent for me. So this is why I do my check-ins, the Ben Checkin In podcast. It's my way of stopping and saying, let me check in with you as I check in on me. And as we check in on each other, can we fulfill these three pillars? These three pillars, again, which are awareness. Awareness is so critical. Starting off by knowing who you are. That's what I want to know when I meet people. I want to know who they are. I want to ask questions that helps me know who they are really well, not from a place of judgment, but from a place that says, you're a fellow human being. I want to do this life with you. And I also do the same for myself. I get to know me as I answer these questions and say, it's better for me to know myself as well as I can so I know who I'm presenting to you guys. And that's important. Number two, the kindness piece. Kindness, it says, let's learn to be kind to ourselves because we're worthwhile receiving kindness. We're worthwhile getting that dose of we're all right. We don't have to be perfect. I was telling someone recently, let's stop with this foolish pursuit of trying to be perfect in life. Instead, let's be honest with who we are, where we're at, right? That's so important. I'm a messy human being. You're a messy human being. If we can come to the table on that agreement, I think we have so much more that we can focus on and grow through. And then finally, the happiness piece, which we all strive for. But happiness comes, I believe, when we clear out some of those other challenging emotions that we all wrestle with, emotions that we'd rather ignore or put away. What would it look like for us to learn how to process those emotions, to learn how to do so in community so we don't feel like we're isolated or alone in the midst of these scary emotions that are actually critical and serve us well. We just have never learned how to express or be in the midst of them. That's what I want to do. Always a work and miss your program. That's all right, Annie. I hope you can catch the recording. Friends, I will see you tomorrow. Thanks for joining in this short session. Have a great Tuesday. We'll chat soon. Bye for now.